2.
Shooting people, boy.
Yeah, but we can't do this again. I'm trying not to let no flash.
When you go in the bowl, they say no flash photography.
Yeah, I know. I get accustomed from things like that. I think that's scary now, you know?
Buy the right camera.
Yeah. But don't talk about mirror. Let's make things a little easier. I would tell you to be pretty flat.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, problem on that end. I know, right? He has some problem on that end as well.
Upstairs.
Yeah, okay. No signal. So let's see what's going on with it. Yeah,
That is slack me. Alright.
okay, I have battery on this. I might end up having to use it to put my mic on the stage if he ain't sort this thing out in the next little while. Sorry about that, but I have a. But then even if I using this to get that, I gotta get the singers and whatnot. That's my problem. Let's see what's going on in the next few minutes because I want to check something. If you sort it out, I can bring it back for you.
Alright. Excuse me. Where's my hug? We have your
How are I didn't see your phone. Let me click yeah. Which appreciate your work. Okay, I just didn't see it. Okay. Oh, that's what you were doing? Oh, of course. Oh, but it's so lovely.
Hi. What's mom?
Good, good.
Alright.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 2.
evening again, everyone. I am terribly sorry to ask this after such a particularly sumptuous meal, but could you all stand for the national anthem?
Almighty God, as we celebrate God's bountiful blessings through the work of our hands, we are indeed grateful to God for allowing us this opportunity to celebrate yet another milestone. On what better day could we celebrate this special book launch, The City Around the Hill, the San Fernando Story, by Professor Brisley Samuel, on the feast of the Transfiguration of the Lord. This feast brings us deeper into the mystery of our faith. It reminds us that the history of our lives and the mystery of our faith are brought together in Jesus Christ. At the Transfiguration, Jesus Christ was affirmed of his identity as the beloved Son of the Father, and we are called to listen to him. Today we invoke God's blessings on the mayor's office, God's blessings upon the entire staff, God's blessings on all benefactors and all those who contributed to this special book launch. We pray for increased wisdom, knowledge and understanding. We pray that this book will be of great value, assistance to this generation and beyond in its discovery and celebration of our rich history and traditions as a nation. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please have your seats. His Worship the Mayor of the City of San Fernando, Alderman Junior Barello, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West and Minister of Urban Development and Rural Government, I think I got that part wrong, the Honorable Faris Al-Rawi, Deputy Mayor Dr. Ferry Diana Hussein, CEO of the San Fernando City Corporation, Mrs. Kathy Ann Mills-Mark, and Deputy CEO of the San Fernando City Corporation, Ms. Heather Crawford, distinguished holders of the keys to the City of San Fernando, Dr. Indar, Dr. Chanley, and Mr. Keith Belgrove, Chairman of the South San Fernando Area Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Kiran Singh, Superintendent Harry Prasad of the San Fernando Municipal Police, and Superintendent Smith of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our publishers, Mr. and Mrs. Naran Singh of Lloyd's Publishing Company, members of the University of the West Indies, Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh and Dr. Kusha Parker Singh, members of the media, specially invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And I'm very happy to say that that will end the formal part of this evening's ceremony, because this evening we are here gathered as friends and as companions and stakeholders in San Fernando as we have our newest and most exciting endeavor, which is the launch of The City Around the Hill, the San Fernando Story. And moving swiftly along into our program, program, we have remarks from our publisher, Mr. Clifton on behalf of Royals Publishing Co. Please welcome him round to the stage.
Worship the Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. As I stand here, may I permit me to digress for a few minutes, though not inappropriately. As I stand here, I recall the lines of the poet John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is part of the continent, part of the main. If a pebble be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. Or a dry house were, of a dying world. Every man that diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Will never send to ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for all of us. Those who live Brinsley well will be diminished by his absence, or may be consoled by Shakespeare's words, his praise shall still find room even in the eyes of all posterity. Those who knew him well will know of his sense of solidarity, his sense of community, his sense of togetherness, where there were no strangers across the crowded floor. He never had to prepare a face to meet the faces that he met. Such an affable person he was. To remember him as an admirable man with a remarkable career, one in whose harvest of achievement had constructed something upon which to rejoice. But in his harvest of career, it was not only confined to academia, but his quest for social justice and equality, the alleviation of poverty, indigence, and the suffering, and he too suffered. But during his tenure, while he was in the political arena, he did a great lot to accommodate the welfare of man. Now, it was Brinsley's deep desire to conclude this work and to present this work to you all this evening. Sadly not. He worked tirelessly. He worked with all great ambition to get his work published. Such was the passion in him that I would say it emanated from the holiness of the heart's affection. Now we are here to share in an occasion that marks continuity, in that it reaches deep into the past, records the present, and looks toward the future. A link that is not only vital to San Fernandans, but to the entire society. So it's an evening when the people of San Fernando should be proud that we are here to recognize the progress of the city. Now the publication of this work has come about to reality, it's come to reality through the initiative of the Mayor of San Fernando, Junior Redwell. A man meticulous, and even fastidious to the point of pursuing perfection. Over and over again, we will have discussions on this. And also, I will not forget the work of Ashwini Rampol, the able assistant, who had worked tirelessly to have this book completed. Now, I wish to preface my remarks by giving you a brief background to Royals Publishing Company, for those who don't know Royals. Royals has been existent for 38 years, based in Trinidad and serving the Caribbean. Our main thrust has been to produce curriculum material appropriate to the cultural, to the academic, and to the pedagogical needs of Caribbean students, primary, secondary, and tertiary. In addition, Royals has established an electronic platform, that's a digital platform, it's called Digital Canopy, C-A-N-O-P-I, which allows authors, teachers, institutions to develop their products and monetize their products throughout the world. Now the publication of this work, The City Around the Hill, is in a very particular way the new direction Royals has taken during the past 10 years. Only recently during the pandemic, the moving finger never paused. We published Ken Rampton's classic work, Matter the Writing, Brindis Samaru's April Kodorenzi, Tony Diaz, Tony was last seen, Claude Dengo, after 50 years in teaching profession, John Humphrey by Doreen Shah, and Clifton Sing's Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright, the story of Chandra Paul, and also Mr. Solo, the story of Ken Charles. Today, it is the city around the hill. Now, the response to Brinsley request to participate in this event, required careful consideration. First, the inherent social responsibility which a publication of this work implies. The inherent social responsibility which it implies. And we have seen it as enlightening research for the entire society. Secondly, the company was engaging in a narrative of experience fashioned out of deep and extensive research and to the author's personal engagement with the subject. The procedures, therefore, were far from impersonal. The publication of this work was informed by principles such as respect for the authenticity of the work, restraint in interfering with the author's creation, but at the same time doing our editorial work. And thirdly, the interest of the company in this work stemmed from a real identification with the substance of the work, its honest rendering of undistorted realities. Now here is the work that will certainly make connections and encourage meaningful transaction with the reader. Here is the work that invites the attention of multiple audiences: the historian, the sociologist, the literary analyst, the trade unionist, and the common reader. The process was very far from impersonal and formal. It was mutually enhancing between the company and Brinsley, and we aimed at high quality and high standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narayan Singh. At this time, we would like to recognize the presence of and welcome the Minister in the Ministry of Finance and the Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, the Honorable Brian Ryan. And as we move along, it is with a sense of mixed emotions, of course, as we mourn the loss of one of the greatest contributors to San Fernando, one of the greatest historical minds, Dr. Samuel. But as we continue to commemorate his memory and, of course, all of his contributions as such to the story of San Fernando. And to give us further remarks on this, further reflections on the life of Dr. Samuel is Dr. Kusha Harak Singh, Honorary Consultant at the University of the West Indies. And just before we welcome him, of course, I'd like to welcome as well Mrs. Manning in our presence as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Harak Singh.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I should begin by saying that in the recent past, I have not been used to public speaking out of deference to an oath of office I took from the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission that enjoined me not to be engaged in public controversy and certainly not to be engaged in any event that bore the slightest tinge of a political gathering. But I'm happy to put all of that aside today in order to address you on my esteemed colleague, friend, Dr. Brinsley Samaru, Brinsley as I knew. I cannot hope to replicate the very moving and powerful tribute that was paid to him by my friend Winston Dukaran at the occasion of his funeral, but I will try to do my best as I give you my personal reflections of Brinsley Samaru. And I'm very happy to do so here in San Fernando, which was the scene of a great deal of our original interaction. I first knew Brinsley as a student at Naparimo College when I was the lowest of the low in Form 1B, I think. And Brinsley was already a distinguished and very versatile and admired member of the sixth form class. A very powerful sixth form class in Naparimo of those days that was very attuned to the proficiencies involved in drama and in public speaking and acting and in public pronouncements. We as Form 1 students saw him in a production called Imitation of Masters. And we were kind of enthralled by the ease with which the sixth form students would make fun of their masters. The masters that we as Form 1 students were very scared about. But to see him do this in a very respectful manner, without rancor, without bitterness, but critical, and at the same time reverential, was very eye-opening. This was how we were taught in Naparimo College, to be critical but also to be reverential. And I have to say that this is a quality that I came to know later on, marked him out in his life, and especially when he entered the hurly-burly of politics. He was critical but always referential, which I shouldn't say because I'm not allowed to engage in controversy. It's not a quality that we find so often these days in political life. I next encountered Dr. Samaru when I was teaching at Naparimo College for a while, the year before I went away to university. And he was also teaching there the year before he went away on his Commonwealth Fellowship to London. And in those days, when the last show was finished and the patrons had trips out of the Palace and Metro cinemas, and the taxi stands were then closed because that was the last trip home. There was no taxi to go home. I had to avail myself of the hospitality of Dr. Samaru, Brinsley as he then was, and to share his quarters in the dormitory in Naparimo, because there was no way of going back home that often. And during that time I got to learn a lot about him, a lot about his humor, his charm, a lot about his concern for ordinary people. He used to tell me a story about when he would go to meet people. I used to go along with him in remote villages in Trinidad, especially in the Rio Claro area. And there in settings with ordinary villagers, sometimes with no electric light, we'd be giving these esoteric lectures on the science of phrenology to ordinary people in the village. That is the science of the measurement of the human brain. And he was connecting that with the attitudes that people had to Africans and Indians, especially in colonial writing. And it was very interesting to see how ordinary people would cotton on to what he was saying, even though it was, a kind of esoteric kind of discourse. But he had a way of making it meaningful to ordinary people, and that was a quality that he carried throughout the rest of his academic career. The next time I encountered Brinsley, I was studying in Jamaica, and he was already teaching at the University of the West Indies, and I came to visit him. And I must say I left slightly dismayed, a little worried, because I saw him living in rental accommodation in Quebec. He was very modest, he was sharing a room, and he was riding to work on a bicycle. And here was I, an aspiring university lecturer, thinking, I wonder if this was going to be my lot on a yearly salary, if that was what I was aspiring towards. But that quality also was a quality of modesty, a quality of no frills, a quality of a substance of what was meaningful without show. And that too is a quality that he carried on through the rest of his life. At that time now, I was studying in London, and he was on study leave. So we met in London. I was there because I was sent on a scholarship from UWI, something called the Sylvian Bowles Postgraduate Fellowship, which I came to know later on. I have the distinction of bearing with a former Prime Minister of Trinidad and the current Prime Minister of Trinidad. It was a scholarship for Tobago students, but it was extended afterwards to accommodate Trinidadians. And it was not actually a a very lucrative scholarship. So when Brinsley came to see me in London, he was able to teach me about the ways of getting around the expenses of London transport, and also to tell me where I could find the cheapest cut of lamb neck, because that was the cheapest kind of meat you could find to cook. He was very resourceful in those kinds of things about making do with what you had, which was a big quality that he had, and that he carried through to the end of his life. But there were two things he told me in London which stayed with me. The first was he was having intense discussions with Bill. He was meeting Bill every other day, and he was talking and he was learning a lot, but also exchanging a lot of opinions with Bill. And it took me a while to realize that this Bill he was talking about was Dr. Eric Williams. And I was not therefore surprised when he was chosen as the person to edit the collected works of Dr. Eric Williams. The second thing he told me in London was crucial. He said, you should do all your writing now. Because when you get back to Trinidad, there will be so much distraction, you won't be able to write it all. And I'm glad to say that that was not an advice he took upon himself, because he became a prolific writer here in Trinidad. And his works spanned a wide variety of areas that I'll kind of take you through a little later on. But here, I came back from London and I joined what was then called the Institute of African and Asian Studies. Brinsley was in the Department of History. We were trying to work on Africa and India. Brinsley was commissioned to work on New World history. And there was a slight conflict because there were very powerful people at the time in what was called the New World Group, who thought that we should not pay attention to Africa and India, but should pay attention to the Caribbean and to our New World heritage. And so, although that original institute was again the brainchild of Eric Williams, who had visited Nigeria and visited India, and had gotten the promise of a visiting professor from India, which came about, and a visiting professor from Nigeria, which never came about. So we had this Institute of African and Asian Studies. And I was reminded about this because just yesterday or the day before, I went to this lecture by our visiting royalty from Ghana, who was talking about the importance, His Majesty, the long name that I can't pronounce, but he was talking about the importance of learning our heritage. And the times I was talking about 1970s, there was a big powerful opinion that we should forget about the heritage and concentrate on what was happening in the Caribbean and what was happening in the New World. And Brinsley was given the task of teaching the powerful course, it was a compulsory course in the Department of History called Foundations of New World History. And because that was a compulsory course, what happened over the years was that not hundreds, but thousands of students passed through the exams. Because they had to. This was a compulsory course. And a course about our experience in the New World. He would tell the students, well, and this is in reference to the conquistadors. He said, first, having arrived in the Caribbean, they fell upon their knees in prayer to God, and then they fell upon the Aborigines, meaning decimating the local population. And that was the way he had of presenting his history, to make people understand and to make, it was kind of humorous, but it was also very catchy. And this is why if you talk to the students who passed through his hands, they would tell you he was the most memorable lecturer, that he was inspiring, that he had a way of bringing the history to life, and that they remembered what he told them all over this time. So that was Brinsley teaching Foundations of New World History, a foundational course in the Department of History, and having a great impact on the minds of young people who would then go on to become the teachers of in the country. In those days, when I first came back from London and joined him, the people who came to the Faculty of Humanities were people who had gone to training college, and they were now coming to university to upgrade their skills. And these were the groups that were going out afterwards into the countryside, into the schools, into the villages and so on to teach history. And that is the group that Brinsley inspired, that is the group that he taught, and that is the group whose accomplishments he was responsible for. So that was Brinsley as a teacher at the university. And then of course, because as university lecturers we are supposed to do both public service and research as well as teaching, Brinsley engaged in a great deal of research. And if one were to look at his, what he said in academia, his curriculum vitae, you would see at least 3 or 4 different strands in his research, all of which were very powerful. The first one I could identify, which is important at this time in the history of our nation, is constitutional change. He wrote a lot about constitutional change. His PhD was on constitutional change in Trinidad, and he did in fact investigate a few important constitutional events in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, including the 1946 Constitution and the Marlborough House Conference, which set the Constitution for the Republic and for the independence of Trinidad and Tobago. So he had a lot to do with those things, and he, as a student PhD student in London, studying imperial history at Birkbeck College in London, he would have been aware of colonial machinations in the area of constitutional change. And he would be aware of how the British experimented in ways that they would not dare to experiment in their home country, but experimented without any inhibition. Experimented without any inhibitions over land, over outside of the UK, experimentations that we are still paying the price for. These experimentations included constitutions about how power was to be transferred in a society, how elections were to be held, how election boundaries were to draw up, some of which made no sense, constituencies which made no sense even today or even next week when we go to the polls. These experiments were done in India, they were done in Nigeria, they were done in Sri Lanka, they were done in Ireland, and in all of these places, the electorate is still facing the consequences of those experiments. It was done in Guyana, as you know, facing the consequences of those experiments. So Brinsley investigated all of these things, and he knew too that as a PhD student in London, he was writing for examiners who were schooled in the colonial tradition of Britain, and this must have influenced his determination about the necessity of telling our own history from our own angles, which is something, of course, the publishers are also keenly aware of, which is why we have a publishing house here in Trinidad and Tobago. So that is one of the major themes that I see in Brinsley's writings. The second theme is about biography. Brinsley belonged to that school of history that we sometimes call the Great Man School, which is where you write about important people and you try to analyze what they meant and what they did. So one of his first articles was about a man called Cyril Prochum David, and the subtitle of that was The Emergence of the Black Man in Trinidad's Politics. He wrote about, recently, as you know, about Adrian Colarenzi. He also wrote about Albert Gomes. He wrote about Cipriani. He was writing history as biography, and that's a very important thing in his work. The third important thing that I saw, and that is discernible from his writings, is his concern with the Presbyterian mission in Trinidad. He wrote a lot about the Presbyterian experience and about Presbyterian activities in Trinidad. And again, his writing was reverential, critical, but never with any acrimony, always easy and always seeing the best in people. Though I have to tell you, he once gave me this joke about sitting in the front seat in a church. It might have been Susanachara or somewhere else, and the pastor was preaching, and a priest blew the page of the pastor's script onto the floor, and Brinsley picked it up to hand it back to the pastor. And while he was doing so, he glanced at the script, and he saw an annotation in the margin, weak point, raised voice. So he had a way of telling people in kind of humorous fashion what were important points, important things that he knew about people. So he wrote about Presbyterians, and he wrote about their efforts in Trinidad and Tobago. He wrote at the time, of course, when everybody was very complimentary about the Presbyterian efforts in education in particular and in cultural training and so on. Nowadays there is a slightly different view because, as you probably know, as I was told, each generation writes its own history. All men are grass and historians, poor fools, wither faster than most, which means that as you pass along, people come and tell the story in different ways. So nowadays, especially with the resurgent Hindu nationalism in India, people talk, yes, about the Presbyterian connection in terms of education, but they also talk about what was done to the mind, what was done to self-esteem, what was done to how people thought about themselves and so on. So there are different currents of opinion now that people explore. But nevertheless, Brinsley saw some of that in his writings, and he saw that this conversion that he was writing about was never always total. And he came to understand that many Presbyterians in Trinidad, as they got older, began to think about their ancestral heritage. And to think sometimes that maybe they made a mistake or maybe were not totally in tune with what was required. So he coined the word to refer to this group as Presby Hindus. This was his coinage about a group of people that he saw who were now trying to reassess the movements in time, trying to reassess what they did as young people, and now the older they got, they were seeing different realities in their life. So that was another major theme in Brinsley's writing, the Presbyterian heritage in Trinidad. A third theme, which was extremely important, was Brinsley's influence on what became to be known as the study of the Indian diaspora. That word itself gave us a lot of trouble because diaspora, you probably might know, means the scattering of the Jews. But we were talking about the scattering of Indians from India throughout the world. The 19th century movement of Indians from India, which was one of the large-scale movements of mankind, though it was not a movement that is always understood for its significance. So Brinsley started this investigation, and in 1975, we had in Trinidad here the first ever conference on Indians in the Caribbean. Brinsley was away in Canada at the time on study leave, so the task fell to me to chair that conference, but he would have been the natural chairman for that. And my friend Mr. Dukaran was major organizer of that conference. That was a study of Indians in the Caribbean that was extended to Indians overseas. And although this is a big field of study now, it's a big field of study in America, in Europe, in England, not always is the study concerned with what we call the plantation diaspora, that is the Indians who came as indentured laborers. The study of the diaspora is now the study of very educated and proficient people who go to England, who go to America as doctors and engineers and lawyers and so on, and who now, they say, have the highest per capita income of any group in America. But that's a different diaspora. The diaspora we were concerned about is the diaspora of the plantation, of people who came as plantation laborers. And that's a story that really has to be told in many different ways. Brinsley was starting it, there's still a long way to go. That's a story I told a couple of years ago when I was giving a speech in Guyana on the 150th anniversary of Indians arriving in Guyana, and I was explaining to the audience that indentured Indians in the Caribbean were responsible for Barack Obama. And people were asking me, well, how was that possible? And I tried to explain that when Gandhi went to South Africa, he was converted in South Africa by indentured Indians who taught him the technique of non-violent passive disobedience, which afterwards all of the adherents of Martin Luther King went to India to learn about, which fostered the movement in America, the civil rights movement, which made it possible for the Voting Rights Act to be passed, which made it possible for Barack Obama to be president. This is a connection between indentured Indians and what happened in the rest of the world. So that was the kind of theme that we were trying to foster, and Brinsley was a major feature of that group of studies on Indian indenture. He did this in connection with colleagues at the University of Warwick in the UK, where he edited a number of books and studies dealing with the Indian diaspora. So this is part of a small part, but brings a major contribution to historical scholarship and to what is an enduring legacy. The last part of it, of course, as you know, is his work on Eric Williams, or Bill, as he called him in my time, work that we will be paying attention to sooner or later. And we will again be regaled by the deep insights that brings light into the history and peoples of Trinidad and Tobago. This book, now in San Fernando, will take its place alongside those accomplishments and will cement further the enduring legacy which he has given to the scholarship and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando Singh, and on behalf of Professor Samuel, on behalf of the entire San Fernando City Corporation and all of us who had the pleasure of working with him in bringing this project to fruition, I can honestly say that he has touched all of our lives, not only as a contributor, collaborator, and credit to San Fernando, but to many of us gathered here today, a friend. At this time, we would like to recognize the presence of the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Senator the Honorable Haji Kazim Hussain. Thank you for joining us this evening. And moving along, I would like to welcome to the stage remarks from Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh, Senior Lecturer, Department of History at the University of the West Indies.
His Worship the Mayor, Honorable Arawi, Nani and Hussein, members of the San Fernando City Council, specially invited guests, I am deeply honored to be here this evening to briefly review this much anticipated publication, The City Around the Hill. I want to highly commend Mayor Regrello and his council for this vision to commission this work, but more importantly, for selecting the best academic expert to guide its evolution. I am deeply saddened that my former teacher, Professor Brinkley Samaru, is not here to witness this event. He devoted many hours at that library at UB St. Augustine, meticulous research to produce this masterpiece, a labor of love. This gifted academic carefully arranged this book into 5 sections and presented a comprehensive history spanning from the first peoples to the present day in a compact form that would be entertaining and enjoyable for laypersons. The splendor and diversity of San Fernando is captured in these pages. Some of these persons are from outside the city, such as James Lewa, who was born in Tableland. San Fernando has global connections which are commendable, included as stalwarts as Carlton Mack, a Cantonese youth who migrated to Trinidad in 1932 and became immersed in the business sector, and we all know the JTA supermarket at Carlton Center. Similarly, the politician Roy Joseph, whose parents were Syrian immigrants. This book is so interesting. I want to highly recommend it to schools, not just to adults, but for schools. Many who were nurtured in San Fernando and have born abroad, the diaspora, have made us proud. Some San Fernandians who have become part of this outstanding diaspora include Eugene Chan, who would later migrate to China, Ibit Mosahed, an early member of the PNM and the second mayor of this city, migrated to Canada and began his dental practice. And the world-renowned novelist Samuel Selpon left this city, went to London and Canada, and returned to Trinidad. These examples reinforce one of Samaru's observations, and I quote, "Coming from a small island, they left big footprints in a continental space." End of quote. And some of these people have left big footprints. Olympic stars, Rodney Wilkes, Paisley Crawford, Manny Bramjohn, all from San Fernando, legendary Calypsonians such as Black Stallion. They have left these big footprints at home and abroad. It's further proof that there's something special about San Fernando. It's election season, and we know San Fernando and politics are inseparable. And it's really amazing when you consider this city, a relatively small city, has been the home of or providing education for 3 presidents: Noor Hassan Ali, George Maxwell Richards, and the current Honorable Christine Kangaloo. And also 2 prime ministers, Patrick Manning and Basdeo Panday. Other political personalities from San Fernando include Lionel Superan, who have also made an indelible mark in our parliamentary history. The book has a gender balance and included personalities as Beryl Archibald Critchlow, a social worker and former mayor, Joan Yule Williams, Muriel McDavidson, who served with distinction in the council and also the parliament, and also well known is Madam Randuli Maharaj, who has carved a niche in cosmetology. These biographies reflect the caliber of men and women who overcame hardships and challenges. Families as the Montanos had their dreams, their careers, their businesses interrupted by World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. These and thousands of families made personal sacrifices to continue that sacred responsibility of building a nation, of building Trinidad and Tobago. I could spend the entire night praising the city around me here. But I want to highlight one fault in the book. It's not a typo, it's not a grammar mistake. It's the omission of a graduate of Naprima College, Brinsley Samaru. And of course, Samaru would not want to include himself among the biographies. And all these biographies, these life stories, inspire our youth, the next generation. And they need more positive male role models. They need more positive female role models. And I believe that this book could possibly help deviant and delinquent minds, inspire them to return to the right path of life. All countries, all cities, urban and rural areas have an ugly history. San Fernando has its fair share of an ugly history, especially in the colonial era. And Professor Samaru has highlighted this in section 2, when he mentions the Muharram massacre in 1884 and the famous June 1937 uprising. He placed all these incidents in a proper historical context and even mentioned the post-independence years and ugly incidents, Bloody Tuesday in March 1975, of a people continuing to struggle for social justice and freedom. In section 5, there's a brief mention of the various committees of the City Council, and one sentence caught my eye. A meeting of the Public Health Committee in 2015. They were addressing the issue of homeless persons on Harris Promenade. And this is what Professor Samaru included in this book. Vagrancy and homelessness, not merely a problem for the council or the government. It's a challenge for every citizen to focus on finding solutions to those who are scorned and neglected. So the city around the hill, it is not just about the successes, it's not just about the achievements, it's also about those who are neglected. One of the admirable features of this monograph are the beautiful photographs depicting the architecture, the infrastructure, the landmarks of San Fernando. Fascinating scenes of San Fernando Hill, King's Wharf, Naprima Bowl, General Hospital, Carib House, Carnegie Free Library, all will appeal to readers. In section 4, there are brief snapshots on educational institutions, Astra, Open Bible High School, San Fernando Central Secondary School. There's also information on churches, masjids, and mandirs. These reflect religious institutions and reflect a city of tolerance. A city of tolerance and progressive people. The book is published at a time when our country is in a crisis, a historical crisis. And I will tell you something that happened earlier this year. I spoke with a Standard 4 student in a primary school. I'm not going to mention the primary school. I don't want any pre-action protocol letters. And I asked this Standard 4 boy, how many cities do we have in Trinidad and Tobago? And the boy thinking for a while, and he said Port of Spain. I said, there are many more cities. What about in South Trinidad? He thought for a while, and he looked at me, and with all genuineness, he said, Gulf City. And I was surprised. I was surprised at the primary school level, there is this uncertainty, there is this ignorance. I'm just talking about Standard 4. There might be people in Form 4 and Form 5 and Form 6 who might not be aware of how many cities we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And it just shows the importance of this book to Trinidad and Tobago. We have no identity often. Often we have no historical consciousness. And I see that sometimes when we often show no caring for our country. If we have no heritage, if we have no consciousness, then we are superficial citizens who are ruthless. And if we are superficial citizens with no consciousness, we will be hollow citizens. There are two simple messages emanating from this book, The City Around the Hill. Firstly, we must be grateful to the early pioneers who laid the foundations for San Fernando. And secondly, we must cherish and protect this city with its glorious institutions and unique infrastructure. Your city is our city, a precious legacy. It is my firm belief that this book will challenge us to be more patriotic, more loyal to San Fernando and the rest of Trinidad and Tobago. It would be unfair to believe that only a city's history should be recorded. I believe that every community, every village should begin recording their history, should document their history for the next generation. I thank you.
Because I intended to come out here and market the book to you all for purchase, but it appears he has taken my work. But for those of you that are interested, we will be taking orders for the publication at the table just to your right, and of course we have copies to the front for your perusal. Moving right along, we would like to welcome to the stage, bringing remarks, Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, the Honourable Brian Manning.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this fantastic occasion. San Fernando is a special city, as we all know. We produce so many quality people, quality individuals, also politicians. So we're not doing too bad. I'm excited to be here to really celebrate the life and times of a brilliant man. My father often spoke about his discovery and the work that he did and his dedication to research and academia. I greatly appreciate all that he has done and the lasting legacy he has left. This book is a sample of his contribution to Trinidad and Tobago. That's something that we should all hold extremely highly. I'd like to thank the Mayor of San Fernando, Mr. Junior Grillo, his worship, for being able to commission such a fantastic commemoration of this great city and Mr. Samuel himself. There's, so much I could say, but because I didn't have the first-hand knowledge of dealing with Mr. Samuel, a lot of what I know was second-hand, unfortunately, from speaking with my parents. I met him on a few occasions. I met him last year. He seemed to be doing quite well. But what I do know and what I understand is that his commitment and his dedication to this country and especially this city is something I will never take for granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And at this time, I would like to apologize. You said earlier that you tend to avoid events with any politicians, but as we move swiftly along this election season, so you will find those events very scarce. And we invite our next speaker to the stage, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development and Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, the Honorable
Thank you very much, Faith. Your Worship, the first citizen of San Fernando, the actual only person still in office under law. You represent all of the council and the city of San Fernando. But I do recognize the past Deputy Mayor, Dr. Fernando. I recognize, of course, my cabinet colleague, dear friend, and exemplar in San Fernando, Haji Kazim Hussein. I recognize my colleague, Brian Manning. I recognize the very many distinguished persons sitting in this audience. I'm a little lost on some things. Can anyone explain to me how Dr. Harak Singh has not aged? Can anyone explain to me how Dr. Shamli was born with silver hair and still has it? Can anyone explain to me how Dr. Rupert Indar is as amazingly fantastic as he is and still going strong and exemplar in San Fernando? I just don't know what the water brings here, what the air brings here, but it certainly says that San Fernando is much more than structures or its history. It's all about its people. Dr. Harrison, you said quite carefully in the JLSC badge type, regional and otherwise, that political events are fairly no-go for someone in your position. Yet we're here to do two things today. One, to speak to a wonderful piece of work commissioned by a forward-thinking council and mayor, but two, to celebrate and regale the life of a politician. Quite interestingly, when you think of Dr. Samaru, whom I have great pleasure to know firsthand and second, in his reflections of Bill, as you've introduced it tonight, it was not lost upon me that he served in opposition to Bill, and yet had so much work in reflection on his life and contribution to society. You see, that in and of itself represents San Fernando. It's a place where policy and principle takes dominance over personality. And you can see that in our politics. It is not vitriolic. It is very much policy driven. In the latest incarnation, and forgive me for this plug, it is represented by people like Marcus Gidari. We have Hussein, Nargan Joseph, people who I've known, some of them for my whole life, and people who I can recognize stand for policy. There's a story that Kazim Hussein gives of his principle and dedication to purpose, of being a shop steward and picketing his own father who was mayor, saying the mayor must go. And then he tells of the story of having to be snuck in home at night where his mother let him through the back door and he avoided his father for a week because he was there with a placard on policy to a principle that he believed. San Fernando is generational, and San Fernando today pauses to reflect upon its history. I can speak a little bit about where we're headed to, because in my commitment for the policy that I embraced in becoming the Member of Parliament twice for San Fernando, it was part of mission critical to develop San Fernando. To me, San Fernando has developed in its suburbs quite well. But the core of San Fernando was not given the fair attention it needed. And therefore, in reflecting upon where we came from, we must also have an eye on where we're going. I looked through the pages of that book, and I know my nieces are going to have a lot of fun with it,
because I saw the Sinanan dynasty next to Lionel Frank Sukaran. I was a mere footnote in that, quite interestingly. But the Sinanan dynasty married the Sukaran, and there's this wonderful picture of my grandfather and Ashford Sinanan both at Marlborough House. And the joke in the family now that Sinanans and Sukarans are married is whose grandfather closer to Bill. So there is that camaraderie and purpose that prevails in all that we do. In our road ahead, the commitment that our history tells us we must do is that we must invest in San Fernando. And the investment has been a very significant one. It's not good enough to reflect upon the Carib House. It's not good enough to reflect upon the glory days of what the Wharf used to be, or King's Wharf as it's properly called, or Plaza San Carlos as it's really known in history. Thorpe's Garage and the railway station cannot continue to be in disuse and in rot. Dr. Shamley, who has spent an entire lifetime, Dr. Edmund Shamley, Dr. George Shamley, Dr. Stacy Shamley, working amongst the people that live along the wharf, be it tractor, be it whomever it is. There are many people who can tell you that San Fernando has not seen its fair share of growth. And as we have laid the tracks for development, we've made sure to hold on to our history. If you pass along the main roads of San Fernando now, you will notice that the Lady Hales Avenue has been brought into many lanes. A seawall has been built. I can tell you that within a couple of months, 3.9 hectares of land starts reclamation just at the wharf. That turns into hotels, into development, into structure. If you look where our bus garage used to be, you see it cleared away. That's 400 high-end homes to be built right on the waterfront, beginning with our Skinner Park, a landmark for us, for our history, where Hazley Crawford ran, where Wilkes ran, where our heroes happened. But the progress of the city is what matters. In our historical development of Plaza San Carlos, you will see the names come alive again. And what I can say in celebrating the life of Dr. Brinsley Samaru, through the publication of Royals, commissioned by a council that is anchored in its history, as the walls of the mayor's office will show, each and every citizen that serves San Fernando up on that wall. We are insistent that our go forward marries and keeps our traditions alive. It's only in that way that Southern Medical, one of the premier medical institutes in Trinidad and Tobago, will see its fair share, because medical tourism happens, access happens, gateway happens. That sporting, as we have the Commonwealth Youth Games here, with 1,000 athletes here in Trinidad and Tobago, that they have a place to bring to life the next generation of sportsmen, of contributors. The rivalry between NAPS, Dr. Dowlad, and Prez, Brian, you and I, and Uncle Edmund representing, we know that rivalry is strong, but it has brought about academia which is explosive. San Fernando boasts of the most number of national scholarships in the country. We boast of the best medical experience. We boast of professions, of business, of footprints on continents, and of voices that echo. For all of us here assembled, generations as we are, because there's a generational side to San Fernando. The Hussein family, Rakib Hussein, Kazim Hussein, Riyad Hussein, now young Sadiq Hussein in Pak. My own grandfather, my mother, my grandmother, myself. You look at the Manning family, you look at the Regrello family, if you consider Nigam now properly adopted by Junior otherwise. If you look at San Fernando as Junior Rupert Indar follows in Senior Rupert Indar's footsteps, as Stacey follows Edmund Shamley in her palliative care and care for the people of this country who need assistance in their hardest times, the Suman family. San Fernando is a place that we can be very proud of, because we've kept our traditions alive. Ladies and gentlemen, copyright law says that you enjoy your copyright for life plus 70. So says the Berne Convention. It's a pity at times that we only stop to reflect upon the grandeur and contribution of people after they've gone. To Royals, I say thank you so much for ensuring that this work came alive. It is, Professor, Doctor, perhaps a terrible omission that the humility of Dr. Samuel didn't allow him to include himself in the very pages that he published. The next challenge to Royals, to the university, to all of San Fernando is catching attention. There is a dopamine burst every 21 seconds on TikTok and Instagram, not on turning pages, unfortunately for many. There is an information gap. There is a lag in our society. And there was something very poignant said as I move to a conclusion. There is a lot of invisibility amongst us. We live in a society with invisibles. And what do I mean? As the Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, I can tell you I represent 25,000 people, so says the EBC. And I agree with you, Dr. Harrock, saying that our constitutional experiment has a lot to be said, as Mr. Dugran has so capably demonstrated for many years of my admiring his work and his contribution. But inside of that, be it our service commissions that cause issues, be it our 3/5 majority and need for formulistic law as opposed to proportional law and the fight as to which one will prevail, people have become invisible. In my 25,000, in San Fernando West there are 11 HTC communities. At San Fernando East and San Fernando West there are 30 HTC communities. The San Fernando West HTC community, the total population is 8,500 people. And the squatting community in San Fernando is 3,000 people. 8,500 plus 3,000 out of 25,000. And that whole of society, leave no one behind, managed to get someone to read and know that there is more than the city of Gulf City. That becomes the task. And I can tell you that the contribution of moving people from invisibility, which is poverty and squatting and the working poor, that is a mission that we take very, very seriously. And you can see it in the footprints of San Fernando, which will no doubt be a continuation of this work. If you look to the 400 or 500 housing village improvement homes that we've done, where we create homes and give title to land so that you can actually own the property you're on, take it to the bank and be visible to the bank, leave it to your children and be visible in a will. It's the only way our society will find remedy or hope. So ladies and gentlemen, join me in celebrating the great decision on the part of His Worship the Mayor and the Council of the City of San Fernando in commissioning this work. Join me in thanking Royal Arts and the brand that stands behind it in ensuring that this work was delivered. Join me in reflecting and celebrating the life of Dr. Brinsley Samaru, a man who has made more than his fair share into the history of Trinidad and Tobago, and whose work still continues. To the many people gathered here today, all distinguished daughters and sons of the city of San Fernando, it is good to see you all. The air is good in San Fernando. The people are good in San Fernando. The secret to youth and longevity, be it from Jo Newell Williams, who we are all trying to figure out how old she really is, or Dr. Harrock Singh, whom I knew as a little boy and still looks the same way. I just wish to tell you, congratulations. Thank you so much for the opportunity for these small reflections. God bless you all.
Honourable Minister, I'm sure many of you will agree with me as we say, there certainly is something in the good water in San Fernando that inspires the sense of excellence that is exhibited in its truest form in the CEO of the San Fernando City Corporation, Mrs. Kathy Ann Wilson. Give a round of applause. However, I am sure that many of you will also agree that certainly a fundamental contributing factor to the sense of excellence that continues to thrive in this city is our sense of community and our preservation of culture. And to this end, our next speaker, delivering to us the rationale of the book, is a man that continues to embody both. Bishop, the Mayor of the City of San Fernando, Alderman Junior.
Thank you, Miss Universe. I always said Miss Universe because she's our entrant to Miss Universe. But more importantly, she's my personal assistant and she's on the office of the San Fernando City Corporation representing Trinidad and Tobago. We really have brains, we have beauty as well in San Fernando. So most of us know that we are in election mode. We are campaigning. Elections next week, Monday. The fact that we have three critical persons with us this evening: the coordinator of the San Fernando City Corporation, Minister Kazim Hussein, Minister Mani, and Minister Faisal Wari. I hear today is a testimony to the commitment and the importance of today's event. We put election campaign on hold behavior. This is a significant and a very important event. Recognize so many of the other persons who contributed to this event this evening and eloquent speakers about this project and what it takes and the importance of Professor Sandro who worked in this very, very special production, the city around the hill. It is with a profound sense of pride that I can report the Council of 2019 to 2023 was responsible for 3 publications during our tenure. The first being Calypso Fiesta, our signature carnival event, which has evolved from our group in the 1960s to a mega event that's come back. With people from all around the world assembling to this event, the huge success that it is. And for those of us who do not know, Carnival Fiesta started in our board. So there is a compilation book is on sale here this evening about the history of Calypso Fiesta. But it started in the world with 12 singers. From the semi-final, out of the 12 that were selected 6 to go to the final and public screen for the March show. I understand it's about 24 or 36 singers now and go on, the show goes on and on. And the Naprimo World Fiesta was started at 6 o'clock in the evening and finished by 8 o'clock. Now it starts at about 10 in the morning and finishes about 3 or 4 before the meeting. And that's the history of Calypso Fiesta. The other production that we embarked on was IDEMA, which is a tapestry of our major carnival activities over the years, specifically addressing mass, calypso, and pan. And for those of you who do not like to recognize Professor Brian Copeland with us today, because Brian's father was Mac Copeland, who to the fire service was our premier mass designer and presenter during the 60s, an amazing designer. One of his recognition back in the 1960s when we won Queen of the Bands in Port of Spain in 1962. The masquerader was Esther Theodore from the Mark Copeland band, designed by Mark Copeland. And it wasn't easy to go to Port of Spain in the 1960s and meet George Bailey and Edmund Hart and all those well-known masqueraders and designers. So Mark made his contribution and throughout the 60s. Mark made his name by producing Kings and the Queens with Joe Green and Freud Sultan who represented San Fernando well. Of course, in the Calypso arena, somebody highlighted the name of Black Starlet. But more than Black Starlet, we had so many people that we not know. Lord Melody was born on Lappick Hill. Royal Lion spent on the early years on Harris Promenade, on Coffee Street, not too far from Kimberley's business place. And I remember Lord Shorty, as we were doing before he became Lord Shorty, singing his first calypso at the Empire Cinema, and the name of the calypso was the 16 Commandments of Man. One line we live up to this day: "Thou shalt have no other man but me." And that was the 16 Commandments by Lord Shorty. And there's another famous calypso by the name of Lord Crater from San Fernando that left Trinidad in 1961 and went to reside in Jamaica. And Lord Crater made a name for himself and did a lot of work. But in his latter days, he composed a song called Kingston Town. When he came back to Trinidad in very difficult times, was living in Morripo, a band by the name of UB40 in London recorded Kingston Town, and he made it top 40 and it became a hit. And unlike many musicians, the management of UB40 went in search of the writer of the song. They got to Jamaica, couldn't find him, was told that he came back to Trinidad. They sent the manager to Trinidad, looking for him, and they found him in San Fernando General Hospital, and they were able to offload some serious sterling in his coffers to prove his health, not only his health, but his well-being and his life. So San Fernando made contribution all over. This little gentleman is recording that we call Merlin Tate. Merlin Tate also went to Jamaica in the 60s and was responsible for shaping what was then ska, which is now reggae as we know it, and that sort of thing. So we continue to make our mark, and Pan started in 1963 when the band used to go to Liverpool to perform. Now we really want to know how could they have Panorama in that Liverpool? Because the size of the band was 25 guys, and they rolled the pants in the back, to take the section and go on the stage. And a young San Fernandian by Bobby Mohammed, who was 22 years old, went to Hollis with a 40-piece band and beat the pants off and won Panorama for us in Hollis. And by the way, he was the NAPS, he was a presentation guy. The president in the house. So San Fernando continued to be prominent in the arts, and that book is a complete compilation of our contribution to Carnival, and you guys, anybody take a copy, we're taking the things on the side. Today, we're here to close the final chapter with the launch of The City Around the Hill, the San Fernando story, written by the late Professor Brinsley Summer. This is indeed a labor of love, and the city of San Fernando is extremely fortunate, or should I say, blessed, to have The City Around the Hill, the San Fernando story, penned by Professor Summer. As his last week, he will continue to bless his soul. As a student of history, I was always intrigued by the San Fernando story. My research indicated that outside of Michael Anthony's Anaparima, 1595 to 1900, which was commissioned by the San Fernando City Corporation and former Mayor Rakib Hussain had the vision to commission that book. And I'm hard-pressed to find, I am currently hard-pressed to find a comprehensive account of what transpired during the period 1900 to now. It is in that context the concept was developed to provide perspective of the aforementioned period. My challenge was to find the right person to do the job. I first took notice of Professor Sandro during the NAR period in the 1980s. Our encounters during the ensuing years impressed me, not only by his historical perspectives, but his passion for social change. Additionally, his profound sense of appreciation for our history, respective of political affiliation or ethnicity. One of his standout moments for me was when Kakra Kambon, who was a mover and shaker during the Black Power Revolution of 1970, spoke highly of the role that Professor Sandro played by visiting the mandings and mosques to encourage the cane farmers to work alongside oil field workers in that famous march from San Fernando to Port Spain. It was at the launch of Kola Ramsey's book, of which he was also the author, that I was convinced that he was the ideal person to update the San Fernando story, and the conversation began at that event. That is why I approached him after the event. I think some of the persons here listening who were at that event, and I said to him, Professor Sandro, I need to get a contact number for you. He said, I don't have a contact number. I said, so how do I contact you? He took a while, he gave me a house number, didn't have a cell, and went around. I said, he wasn't interested. But I persevered, and I called the house number. I said, I'd like to see you, Professor Sandro. So he said, so where is your office? He said, at the library and in the University of the West Indies. You could meet me there at a table and chair. So I went up, and we had a conversation, and started, and he said, what do you want to document about San Fernando? So I said, well, we have the version by Michael Anthony. We know what Harris did. We know what San Fernando did in that first couple hundred years or so. We know the British came in 1786, other writers, and in 1797, Spanish, 1797, the English came out with them until 1962. I mean, all of that, right? But we knew what happened after 1900. So there was so much happening. How are we going to document that? So we need 2 volumes. We have to look at the First World War, transpired there, the last one came in, stopped in 1917. We had the Second World War in the 1930s. We had the Adult Suffrage Act that made a lot of people vote, and we went on and on. The role that San Fernando played in the oil riots and so on in 1937. The arrival of the People's National Movement, the meetings with Ibn Musahib and members of that Boys College. This when apps became prominent. They'd have these regular meetings where they invited Brian McDinney and Dr. Williams to have conversations. And out of those conversations came the birth of the People's National Movement. All those things that were recorded, we don't know those things. Dr. Williams met Winston Mahabir and Mr. Musahib and Joel Montano and all those persons at that college to discuss culture and the role of culture played in Trinidad and how it was dominated by colonialism and foreign culture. And that's what caused the birth of the People's National Movement. That is not documented. He said, okay, we need to do something. And that's when it got interesting and it got serious. And we continued the dialogue. And I learned so much from those sessions with Professor Samuel. We spoke about, and the light part was when they were breaking from the dormitory, they go cinema in the night. And when he said new cinema and Gaiety Theatre, we know what we're talking about. And people like Trevor McDonald, who made a name for himself in ITV and BBC, used to Trevor McDonald would go to cinema with them and they look at these old historical movies. And Trevor would stand on the stage and recite line by line everything that he saw in the movie. And he could retain those things and they were impressed with that. All these men, all these guys who went to that school at that era have made themselves prominent and made themselves, not only here, but also internationally. So it's in that context, it's important to document our history. I think it's important for us to have this story that we are again this evening and have this story created tonight. I really enjoyed those sessions with Professor Samuel, and at this point I want to thank Royal for continuing the work. I do want to say that Professor Samuel will finish this work on his deathbed, but I know the last couple of weeks how it was. We will be speaking about volume 2 to document everything, and I want to commend my staff, particularly Ashwini Ram, who is here with us, who have to go to Port of Spain, which is in the custom twice a week, to sit down to do work to ensure that this book can be fruition. And even Faith, who's on the podium, she's part of that exercise, and I must commend the CEO and her staff for giving us the time and investment and ensure that it's working out. Also, there's several sponsors who have played their role. Kennison's, Rattans, Trust, JTA, Belrose, and Pennywise, all made this more contribution to ensure that this book coming to fruition. And I think the San Fernando Corporation, who is the agency vested with the responsibility for safeguarding the history of San Fernando. Having said that, I'm convinced that preservation of our history is essential, and it must be recognized that our historic, cultural, and social landscape are a result of the contributions of a diverse group of people. San Fernando is the most diverse community in the nation. Therefore, we need to recognize and respect it, and it speaks to our plurality. The production of this book is not only an extension of information, but to heighten public awareness of the importance of the contributions made by so many that, if not documented, can be lost. I will particularly want to encourage our young people to read this book and to become involved in the development of our city, its potential and its possibilities. I'd like to charge the ones that will follow me to continue to pay respect to the ones that came before and the contributions that we have made. May God continue to bless the city of San Fernando, and may God continue to bless us all. And thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And at this time, I think we can have another round of applause for the mayor, not only for his rousing words, but as he so eloquently put it, for choosing the best man for the job. And to this end, at this time, I would like to ask you all to observe a moment of silence for the late, very great Dr. Thank you very much. Please take your seats. As in true San Fernando style, we pick it right back up with a musical interlude. Let's welcome very warmly to the stage, Mr. John Thomas.
Stood in the
welcome to deliver our votes of thanks, former member of the 11th Council, Marcus Gadari.
Thank you, and Chairperson, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Alderman, His Worship, Junior Agrello, and please permit me to observe all other protocols as being sought after. It is my distinct pleasure to really give you the vote of thanks for today, and I would like to first of all start with Father Grell. Father Grell has opened us in prayer this day and has invited the presence of God and His blessing upon this ceremony. Father Grell of the Lady of Perpetual Help, thank you so very much. A splendid job, not only in beauty, but in eloquence, of our chairperson, representative for Miss Universe, out of the city of San Fernando, Master of Ceremonies, Faith Janizo. Thank you so very much, love. Remarks from our publisher. And Mr. Clifton spoke about the history and the success of Royals Publishing. And we want to thank you for your contribution and wish you continued success as you continue in the path of keeping the history in print form, which is indeed necessary as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Narayan Singh. Reflections on the life of Dr. Samaru. We heard from Honorary Consultant at UE, Dr. Harak Singh, where he shared on the personalities of the author. And so when we read the book, The City Around the Hill, we would understand the inevitable intellectual placing of character in the writings between the lines of the author himself, because that is important for us to understand as we read a text, the background upon which the author was writing. And for that reason, we want to thank you. We want to thank you, Dr. Harak Singh, that you spoke so eloquently about the evidence of history in San Fernando. And you also spoke about the history in San Fernando as it pertains to the Presbyterian religion, and by extension, that of Naparima. I've been an old Naparima past student myself, with the likes of retired principal with us, Dr. Michael Dowlat, and former Naparima students like Mr. sorry, pardon my memory, but former parliamentary representative Winston Buchanan. You know, Naparima has also had a rich legacy in San Fernando. So thank you so very much, Dr. Harak Singh. We have remarks from Dr. Jerome Tilok Singh, Senior Lecturer of the Department of History. And Dr. Tilok Singh spoke about the splendor and diversity in the writing about the book, The City Around the Hill. And he also spoke about the large footprint, and that footprint not only speaks to, as I just highlighted, the Naparima past students and present students, but also it speaks to the presence of our parliamentarians from the Catholic side, those being the likes of Minister Brian Manning, Minister Faris Salwari, you know, who would have also come from San Fernando with that history and definitely big footprint for us to get into as second generation politicians. We also would like to acknowledge the fact that Dr. Tilok Singh spoke about the many presence of different aspects the book highlights to with regards to San Fernando and its diversity, not just in culture, not just in personalities, but in also where we came from. And we want to thank you, Dr. Tilok Singh, for your contribution. We've had remarks from Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, Brian Manning, and kind words at that for his remarks with regards to author and on the book of the City of San Fernando. We want to thank you, Minister Brian Manning. Minister also in the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, Faris Alwari, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West. You know, he also spoke about the fact that history is needed to direct our path forward. And even as we go forward, we oftentimes don't want to forget our past. And I often speak, when I speak about history and looking forward, I often give the analogy with regards to our motor vehicle as we're driving. And we would understand that our rearview mirror is a very small mirror because it reflects on the past. But it's important that we be observant of our past. But our windshield is so much bigger than our rearview mirror, which is our past, but it's reflective of our future, and the future in which both MP Manning for San Fernando East and MP Faris Alwari for San Fernando West is bringing the city of San Fernando into a bright and huge future. And we wish to thank you, Faris Alwari, for your contribution this afternoon. Rationale. His Worship the Mayor. I often say His Worship the Mayor is a walking encyclopedia of history. And as we look at the book of the city around San Fernando, and as His Worship had indicated, this being the third commission of writing for the 11th Council of Sitting of Council for the period of 2019 to 2023, His Worship spoke about the rationale with regards to the many history that we would wish to capture as a legacy for the 11th Council. And the fact that it is important for us to always remember where we come from. It is always important that we document where we come from, so that we can have that degree of nationalistic value. In today's younger generation, because we do not have the presence of written history, we oftentimes see our young folk desecrating things that are of national importance. And many of you would have seen on various social media something like that happening with our national flag recently. And so it's important that we give to our citizens the understanding of the importance of history and where we came from. Because as we stand at today from a position of an election mode, as I campaign, I often say to my residents, the young ones that is, first-time voters, it is important that you come out and vote, because many have fought, lost their lives, in order for you to have the democratic freedom of voting. And so we had the musical interlude of John Thomas. Wow. And I want to say boldly that the author of that song wrote this song before he even had the opportunity of venturing to Trinidad and Tobago. Because even as he spoke about Jerusalem and the hill of Jerusalem, we are here today to celebrate the hill of San Fernando and the city that is around the hill. But we wish to thank for his angelic presentation that song, John Thomas. Special thanks also to Angostura, our gold sponsor for this publication, and also to you, the many sponsors and supporters of this event today. And even as we come to a close, I would invite you once again to place your order. Make sure that you have in your library and upon your shelves, not only for yourself, for your legacy and your generation to be part of, the history of San Fernando as it stands in this book and the writing of the city around the hill. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end, and I wish to bid you thanks and pleasant evening. God's richest blessings.
Thank you, Mr. Gadari. And as we conclude, just to reiterate that we will be taking orders for copies of the book at the table to your right, and there is a copy to the front, which we will now be having our ceremonial handover with. So we would like to invite to the stage Mr. Clifton on behalf of Royals Publishing Co., who will be representing in their absence the Sandu family. We would also like to welcome the Honorable Faris Alwari, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, as well as Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Brian Manning, and CEO of the San Fernando City Corporation, the very lovely Ms. Kathleen Millsmart, to the stage, please. As we conclude our program for this evening, I would like to bid you all safe travels and good night. Thank you so much for coming.